Veterans Radio Hour. Brought to you by Dallas Corporation for all your corporate printing needs, and by GIM Productions, creating internet solutions. Websites can do that. Now, stay tuned. The Veterans Radio Hour is next on the Veterans Radio Network.
Tango Charlie Bravo, you're a go for the Veterans Hour.
So your company has a website. We are all familiar with how the web can be used to showcase information. But did you know the web can also be used as a medium to actually do something to help your business? GIM Productions delivers custom web-based technology and applications to meet the needs of your company. We have the experience and the expertise to deliver web applications, e-commerce solutions, and interactive multimedia. GIM Productions can help you in making difficult technology decisions. We work to make web technology work for your company, and we will be there along the way to support you as you grow. Our comprehensive team includes talented programmers, software developers, graphic designers, and network specialists that strive to bring you the best. Contact us at our toll-free number 1-887-256-6914 or email us at info@gimproductions.com. Websites can do that. Welcome, one and all, to the Veterans Radio Hour. It's our tribute to all of those who served our great nation's armed forces, past and present, and their tremendous accounts of heroic duty and bravery. With your host, Brigadier General Dave Grange. And now, coming to you live from our Veterans Center studio, here is General Dave.
Good evening, everyone. Dave Grange is on TDY tonight on a special assignment, and he should be returning shortly, we hope, after a little hiatus. We also would like to, at this time, just take a moment of silence, if everyone in their own right way would consider remembering the 7 military veteran astronauts who gave their life. Tonight's show is going to be kind of unique. It's an emotional show, I believe. It's on homeless veterans. It's from an article I read recently in the American Legion magazine called The Cycle of Despair, and all about homeless veterans. So we brought in a few talented people, very knowledgeable, who are going to be able to help us to understand just what is happening today in the world of homeless veterans. With us is going to be Commander Ronald Conley, the National Commander of the American Legion, elected in August 2002, who represents the 2.8 million members of American Legion. He is a United States Air Force serviceman. He was an air policeman, I found out. He also, and why I'd like to be talking with him a little bit later today, is the founder and president of the American Legion for Homeless Veterans Corporation of Pennsylvania, which he himself founded in 1988, and which now operates 8 homes just for veterans. Also joining us will be James V. Carroll. James is a Vietnam veteran himself, and the author of the Cycle of Despair Homeless Veterans article I recently read in the American Legion magazine, where he acts as assistant editor. Then joining us will be our good friend Rochele Crump. She is a former member of the U.S. Army Women's Corps. And in 1998, Ms. Crump was appointed by Mayor Richard Daley, our good friend, as Director and Community Liaison for the Advisory Council on Veterans Affairs under the Commission of Human Rights for the City of Chicago. And joining me directly here is a man I just met and admire a lot, Samuel Miller. He's a Vietnam veteran, 2 tours, United States Air Force, and now works as a case manager for a social service agency known as Feather Fist, and he works for the homeless. He prides himself in the work that he does, especially with the veteran homeless that we have. And he's also, I found out, the state commander of the Catholic War Veterans. and quite active in many other levels of the veteran world. Before we get started, I'd like to make a dedication today. This dedication goes out to all the people who are working out in the field for those who aid and assist the homeless veterans, which I've learned are more than 500,000.
Here is today's military quote of the day, brought to you by support from retired Lieutenant Commander Adrian Rubinkowski.
Our military quote of the day is being taken from very, very far back. It was a warrior who became known as Rome's greatest politician. Back in the Roman Empire days, his name was Cicero, and he said something that I think is very important for all of us today to remember in this time of need. And the quote goes as this: "The safety of the people shall be the highest law." That's exactly what it should be, the highest law, the safety for all. And with over 500,000 homeless, it's kind of hard for me to understand where our country is in dealing and relating towards our veterans, especially when we're on the brink of another conflict, some of which is going to take lives of our soldiers as well as make them disabled veterans. We are still getting over some of our veteran problems we had from the first Gulf War, and today driving here I stopped at a red light to get on the ramp to the expressway out of Chicago, and there was a man with a cane and a can. I put him probably in his mid to late 50s, disheveled clothes, looking rather tired and cold. And so I put my window down and looked him in the eye, and he looked me back, and I saw clarity, and I asked him, I said, "How's things going today?" And he went, "Oh, not so bad." And that was kind of interesting for a man in this predicament of begging to tell me it's not so bad. And then I said, "Are you a veteran?" And he said, "Yes, the Korean War." I shuffled around, grabbed a handful of change out of my little pocket there and threw it in his can and wished him the best and asked him if he knew of any place that he can get some help and if he wanted any. He said he wasn't aware of any right now and wasn't looking for any. And I rolled up my window and drove away. So it's kind of hard for me to understand how a person, a unique man like this, a Korean veteran, out on the streets with a can and a cane, trying to figure out what's his next step. Which is what brings me to my now understanding of homeless veterans as we bring on James Carroll. He's going to be the first one I talk to. Jim, are you still with us there?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you. Jim wrote an article called The Cycle of Despair. It's in the magazine. How many magazines are actually sent out?
Each Legionnaire gets a magazine, so our circulation is 2.8 million.
So literally everybody gets one. 2.8 million get mailed out monthly.
That's correct.
And what gave you the idea, or did someone force you to do this kind of a sad story?
Well, I think the American Legion, one of its main causes and purposes is to find out the different plights of veterans around the country, and certainly I don't think there's many plights that are more heart-rending than seeing those who fought on for our country and our freedoms to be sleeping on grates in Washington, D.C., or sleeping under bridges in San Diego, California. So it was just an issue that comes naturally to our organization.
And I noticed in the article you covered both coasts and a little bit in the Midwest and different people that are attempting to do services for the homeless vets. That's
correct. I mean, it's not... It's a nationwide problem. Many people have a mistaken belief that it's an urban problem, and that's probably only because it's reported more. There's more services and abilities to report that problem. But there are just as many homeless veterans, and homeless people in general, in our rural countries that aren't reported, that are sleeping in the woods somewhere or in rural areas that they're just not reported.
And it is true, there are 500,000 or more just veterans that are out there?
Yes, veterans make up about, I think, 1/3 of the estimated homeless population. statistics are strange numbers to play with, but over the course of a year, there would be about 500,000 that would be on the streets. Any given time during the year, it's estimated that there's 250,000 veterans on the streets.
Well, that's an amazing number. Even if it was just 100,000, it still is amazing to me. Being an Army guy in the medical world, I was truly involved with the buddy system, just as I believe a lot of the infantry, the grunts that were out there, had to rely on that guy next to them. So it's kind of hard for me to believe that there's just so many out there today that you would think that the government would have some kind of a buddy relationship with these people that gave their time. And how many of them are in a disabled world? Would you have any idea?
Well, probably from my research and the story, it appeared that anywhere between 60 and 70% of those veterans that are homeless are suffering from certain things, from alcohol abuse, drug abuse, or mental disability. So you're dealing with about 2/3 of the homeless veterans that have problems beyond just being poor and being on the streets.
I want to bring in for a moment now Rochele Crump. Rochele, you with us?
Yes, I am.
And Rochele, here in the city of Chicago, I'm sure you're facing some of the dilemma that we've just talked about. Can you pinpoint it a little bit stronger for us?
Yes, thank you, Kenny. And what Mr. Carroll said is absolutely correct about the 1/3 population being homeless. And here in Chicago, we face those very same numbers with 60, 70, a little over 70% being disabled when we look at the term of being mentally incapable of dealing with, day-to-day things. So here in Chicago, we are faced with high numbers. There's a good effort going on now to oversee it. I won't just say now. Good effort and good faith has been made all along to do something about it. It's just that there was no sound plan to deal with it. But that's changing now.
And then I'll bring in Samuel Miller, because Samuel, I believe you're a case manager who works directly with these veterans, and tell us what a case manager can do for a homeless vet.
Good evening, and I'd like to say good evening to my colleague Rochele. A case manager's job primarily is to take a veteran and give him the opportunity to open doors that he hasn't been able to open himself. For instance, if I start working with a particular veteran who needs services, then it's my charge to make a roadmap, so to speak, for him, of goals to be completed. And initially, we want to get him into a system. If he has not been in the VA system, we want to get him enrolled in the VA system and start addressing his issues. And as we go along this roadmap, the first thing we do is medical and mental assessment to find out what we have. From there, we set short-term goals, and we work together to move this individual up this or along this roadmap to complete these short-term goals.
Yeah, because in reading Jim Carroll's article, The Cycle of Despair, he relates to these unfortunate situations that veterans find themselves in. And I guess the biggest underlying one is poverty. And then there's the lack of affordable housing, the lack of affordable health care, domestic violence, mental illness, addiction disorder, all of which are fueling this homelessness. Jim, can you expand upon that a little bit?
Well, people find themselves homeless for all of those reasons, but most generally, the underlying factor for those people who are not disabled by the conditions that you've already talked about is poverty. Most people that find themselves homeless were a paycheck away from being homeless. And if you can't pay your rent or you can't pay for your car, you can't get to a job, and then you lose your job, and then you're just lost. And so it is a cycle of despair. Without that money, you just cannot move forward.
You interviewed a man named Donald Whitehead, the director of the National Coalition for the Homeless.
Yes, sir.
And he stated here, quote, being poor means being an illness, an accident, or a paycheck away from living on the street. And that many American veterans, even who are employed, doesn't necessarily guarantee them a roof over their head.
That's correct. About 1 in 5 homeless veterans are in fact employed.
And it says about 45% of the homeless veterans suffer from mental illness. Can any of this be related directly back to their service?
Well, certainly some could. They find themselves in the mental condition that they are for a number of reasons, but certainly, particularly from Vietnam forward, PTSD and all that has just created a lot of problems that was not recognized early on, and quite fortunately now some things are trying to be done to resolve that problem.
Well, PTSD.
Right.
It's a term that we've passed around. Rochele, what do you know of PTSD?
Well, let me just say that you've really touched on something that is very broad. When you look at the Vietnam veterans, and I can only speak for here in Chicago, I can't speak for any other state. I worked at the Department of Veterans Affairs regional office for over 23 years, or just at 23 years. I was a veterans benefits counselor, and I also worked with homeless individuals. I've worked with Sam too. I used to work at benefits before, also as a case manager. I've been involved in this homeless plight for a good 10, 12 years. And when we talk about Vietnam veterans, we're looking at, as Mr. Carroll said, the post-traumatic stress disorder. A lot of our Vietnam veterans came back from the war not knowing exactly what they had been through. And it took a long time for them to understand that something was wrong. It took nationally, the whole world, a long time to understand that something was wrong. Veterans filed claims. They were denied benefits. These veterans were unable to keep jobs. They were unable to maintain their home lifestyles, and as a result of that, there were domestic problems where they had to leave the home because of temper, because of not, being able to fit in at home any longer, because they had a lot of things going wrong with them on the inside that was not being treated or not being dealt with. The Department of Veterans Affairs was in denial for a very long time. This put our veterans in a whirlwind on the streets where they were in and out of jobs, in and out of homes, and as a result of that, a lot of turning to substance abuse and alcohol abuse was the result. Therefore, they were then faced with dual diagnosis, that's addiction and the mental problem as well. So those veterans, the good population of Vietnam veterans, went through a lot of that.
Interesting, because as I said earlier, and I met the Korean veteran today, who seemed to be not so much, and that's why I looked him in the eyes and saw the clarity. I expected as some from homeless, whether they were veterans or just homeless people that I've met in my past that we see here in Chicago, or when I go off to New York.
Can I just say, for a long time, after they were denied benefits, they didn't want to have anything else to do with the VA. Therefore, they turned away from any type of medical treatment they could have gotten. And because of the long road to trying to prove that they had an illness that was caused by combat, it was a turnoff to them, and they didn't want to deal with the VA any longer.
Understandable. And how does this relate to some of your life, Samuel?
Well, Rochele expounded on a particular subject, that PTSD for a Vietnam veteran was accompanied with alcohol and probably substance abuse, which the term self-medication comes into play. Being turned off by the VA, how we were treated in the VAs when we came home from the war, made a lot of us go into the street and not go back to the VA. I, in particular, 1972, discharged from service, Southeast Asia, came home, didn't recognize I had a problem, went to the VA for medical treatment, had problems with the system of how they treated us, did not go back to the VA until 1980. So what Rochele just intimated is very true, how we just didn't want to be bothered. Then when we started filing claims, we were denied and denied and denied. PTSD is an illness that lies dormant for a while. You don't even know it's there. You don't even recognize signs and symptoms. But the main component is rage. And once you cross that border into rage, then you're not able to deal with things in a normal situation. Things just get out of control. So a lot of our veterans, a lot of our homeless veterans who are still on the street probably have some PTSD accompanied with substance abuse, and it's untreated. If you treat the substance, then the PTSD has to be treated. If you treat the PTSD, then the substance, you have to remain substance-free.
Understandable. We got one of our chat room people who's already sent in that they already are certain that they're Gulf War veterans out there themselves who have a Gulf War syndrome, whether from a chemical bind or also from a PTSD, a stress syndrome themselves. But we're going to have to take a break for a few moments now. We've got a little complication. I think the commander is going to be calling in a minute. We're trying to track him down right now, Ron Conley. But this is our 22nd program, and we're glad that you're listening to us. Remember, military.com, saluting all who answered the call to our nation's services, military.com, who can help you find out the benefits that are there for you. Also want to recognize the National Vietnam Veterans Art Museum in Chicago, and on February 9th, their Ordinary Heroes of Medal of Honor recipients is going to have a special presentation as part of Chicago Winter Delights at the museum itself, and then we're going to do a special radio program that night on Ordinary Heroes, so be here with us next week. Also visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund at vvmf.org to see their limited edition of Night Vision. And once again, especially with Ms. Crump being with us today, we always want to thank the City of Chicago's Veterans Council, and out in the audience again with us, our chairman, Roy Douglas, here with us, who helps us out. Next week, we've got Ordinary Heroes. Don't forget to be a part of it with us, and we'll be right back after these messages.
You're listening to the Veterans Hour on the Talk Radio Network.
You're listening to the Veterans Radio Hour. We are here every Sunday evening at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're heard on the internet as well as on the Talk Radio Network on numerous stations around the country. Tonight's program is one with great emotional content and extremely interesting. The subject being homeless veterans, the cycle of despair. We're hearing some incredible information, some truly shocking statistics. For example, that at any given time, 250,000 veterans are on the street. And one of the most interesting aspects of that is that 1 in 5 are employed, and yet they are homeless. This is truly shocking to hear. And just stay with us on the show tonight for further information as to what is being done and what can be done and what should be done for these people who have served their country and are now themselves in a position of need. Our guests this evening are Ronald Conley, a national commander of the 2.8 million member American Legion. We're having a little technical problem in getting him online with us, but we hope to have that rectified a little bit later in the show. Also, James Carroll, the associate editor with American Legion magazine. Mr. Carroll is was a combat motion picture cameraman in Vietnam. Also, Rochele Crump, who is director and community liaison for the City of Chicago Advisory Council on Veterans Affairs under the Commission on Human Relations. And in the studio with us is Mr. Samuel Miller, who is a Vietnam vet, having served 2 tours of duty. He is with Feather Fist, which is a social service agency for the homeless, and he's a veterans case manager, himself having struggled through many problems related to his service, and who is now devoting his life to helping other veterans toward a solution for their problems. We're very happy and honored to have him in the studio with us, as well as to have our other guests. The Veterans Radio Hour is on the air every week. You can call us toll-free at 866-928-2329 to participate. That's 866-928-2829. Let me repeat that, 866-928-2329. Of course, if you're listening on the internet, you can check in on our discussion board. We have a good amount of activity on the discussion board this evening, and any questions or comments that you may have, please email them in, and we'll see that the host gets to look at them on the screen here at the round table, and if it's something pertinent to the discussion going on at that moment, he will bring that question up. This is our 22nd program. All of our previous programs are archived on the website, so you can check them out, any program you may have missed. Stay with us, and we'll be back on the air very shortly here at the Veterans Radio Hour.
The Veterans Hour proudly presents our military hero's story of valor.
Valor. All these veterans that have done so much for us, the 500,000 now that are homeless, we've got to be doing something about it. When General Grange is normally here, he tells a great story of somebody or some troop, some battalion that did something outrageously important with a lot of military valor. Today, I just found out, and so I'm going to highlight who Samuel Miller brought to my attention, the 4 chaplains, who all died February 3rd, 1943, when an enemy submarine fired a torpedo and hit the USS Dorchester. And those 4 chaplains are First Lieutenant George L. Fox, Methodist; First Lieutenant Alexander D. Good, Jewish; First Lieutenant Clark V. Poling, Reformed Church in America; and First Lieutenant John P. Washington, Roman Catholic. They all died on the USS Dorchester.
The Veterans Radio Hour salutes the Active Service Person of the Week, made possible through the support of Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer. As they say, PBR me ASAP. Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer, available at your local retail outlet.
Yes, here he is, Staff Sergeant Fred Luce. That's right, good Fred with the 729th Air Control Squadron. In recent years, this 729th Squadron has been involved in operations in the Middle East and South America. Most regularly, they've been deployed in support of Operation Southern Watch, helping to enforce the no-fly zone in Iraq. And Staff Sergeant Fred Luce on all of them is the weapons director with the squadron. He explained recently how people describe the 729th. Quote, a lot of people know what an AWACS, Airborne Warning and Control System, is, but us, the Air Control Squadron, we are essentially the AWACS on the ground. We work in coordination with all of them. So, Sergeant Fred Luce, you're the active service person today. Hooah!
You're listening to the Veterans Hour with retired Brigadier General Dave Grange. And now, back to the broadcast.
And this is Kenny DeCamp. General Dave is on TDY right now, a special assignment. So we're here, and we've been able to bring Commander Ronald Conley on with us, which is so happy to be able to do. He was elected the national commander of the 2.8 million American Legion members back in August of 2002. He's formerly from the U.S. Air Force. He served as an air policeman. I believe Samuel Miller, yeah, he did too, serve as an air policeman in Vietnam. He's the founder and president of the American Legion for Homeless Veterans Corporation of Pennsylvania, which he founded in 1988, which makes me proud to be able to bring him on. Are you there with us, Commander?
Yes, sir.
Great. I'm glad you were able to join us. We've been talking for the last half hour about the 500,000 or so veterans and what they have to relate to in relationship to PTSD, the problems that they have with finding everything from housing to the situations they have with mental illness, the lack of affordable housing and mental health care. What can you add to this? Since 1988, you've been apparently working with these veterans.
That's correct. First of all, the increase since 1998 has gone up by 34% dealing with homeless veterans in our country. Second of all, most people have to understand that homeless veterans are people that served in the United States military honorably, and about 40% of homeless people are veterans. And right now, the VA has shifted some of their ways of dealing with homeless veterans by taking the per diem and their grant program and merging them together. So a lot of the VA facilities within our country are now lacking funds to be able to deal with some of the homeless veterans in their area.
Lacking funds. I was under the impression, from what I've heard, that George Bush signed a big bill last year, 2001, of $1 billion to be able to help out homeless veterans over the next 5 years. Am I wrong?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. And what they're doing is the homeless program is taken care of through 3 different agencies. Number 1 is the Health and Human Service Agency. Number 2 is with HUD. And number 3 is with the VA. Now, they have formed a coalition to try to attack the program and to provide transitional housing and for regular housing for homeless veterans, also to try to get them off the streets, re-educated, dealing with any type of abuse problems. But a lot of the VA facilities also were involved independently trying to take care of homeless veterans by housing them in domiciliary type barracks within the VA hospital. You might set aside X number of beds for dealing with homeless veterans. But now that they merged the per diem program and the grant program together, the VAs locally in those areas are not receiving the funding that they used to in dealing with the problem.
Well, it sounds to me from, I mean, that's a lot you said, but it all started out with 3 agencies again. So now I use that word bureaucracy, seems to have popped back into it. Is that part of it?
Oh, that's absolutely part of it. You're dealing with 3 different secretaries. You're dealing with the Secretary of VA, you're dealing with the Secretary of HUD, you're dealing with the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
And then all of their people with them.
Right. And they're supposed to form this interactive agency commission of representatives from each one of them, and then each one of them is supposed to take a certain amount of money out of each of their budgets and work on trying to deal with homeless veterans.
Mm-hmm. Rochele Crump's on with us, Commander, and she is appointed by Mayor Richard Daley as our Director and Liaison of Veterans Affairs here in the city of Chicago. Rochele, what's happening with this money in Chicago?
Okay, as the commander stated, the 3 agencies, and it's $35 million, 20 from HUD, 10 from Health and Human Services, and 5 from the VA. this money will go to the different states to try to resolve homelessness. It's my understanding that just here, January the 21st, the Chicago area Continuum of Care presented a homeless veterans, not a homeless veterans, but a homeless plan. It's a nationwide plan to deal with homelessness, which means that a lot of that money that is going to the states will not just be earmarked for homeless veterans. So that will make a big difference in how the money is spent, because it's a nationwide effort to end homelessness. That is some of the problems that we have been faced with our constituents or our clients that go to different agencies. A lot of times they go to service providers. They won't tell them that they're veterans because they fear that if they say they're veterans, they won't get the services at that particular department. So you still have a good population of our veterans that are unaccounted for because they will not say that they're veterans.
Well then, Commander Conley, can you help us out? You have 8 homes, I understand, that your corporation now runs. Is any of this money going to be filtered down some way to help you even expand more?
No, we don't collect a penny from the federal government to run our 8 homes. What we do is we have transitional housing in Pennsylvania, and that transitional housing, we don't put any type of criteria as far as time stay for that veteran. Every veteran rehabs at a different rate, and we also, what the VA does, and some of the places they do, they try to set up a dorm type setup for the veterans, where they put more than one veteran into a bedroom. We give each veteran his own bedroom. Everybody needs a certain amount of closure or free time or be able to spend with themselves, you might say. But then we have a common living room, common eating facilities, common bathrooms that they all are responsible for. We have an 85% success rate because the veteran is going to school or he secures a job, and he is able to rehab at his own rate. The second thing we do is there's very few programs that take care of homeless men, veterans, who have dependent children. Now, the government has all kind of different agencies taking care of women with children where they're able to take care of them. But if a man has a child, they normally take the child off of that person, and they give the child to Children and Youth Services until that male is able to rehab himself and become a productive citizen again. Our program, we don't take the children off of the father. If the father has custody over that child, we try to provide them with the necessary housing that he's able to still be able to be responsible for his child at the same time that he's getting treatment to be able to be rehabbed.
Well, the program you're doing seems to be a lot stronger. It's amazing that the federal government could be so discriminatory towards those people. Jim Carroll, the editor and author of the article Cycle of Despair, can you help us out in some of the interviews you've done across the country in relating to housing? What's the most important project or program you found?
Well, there are hundreds of programs throughout the country. If I could just digress a moment.
Please.
This is a situation that government is not going to be able to take care of itself. There's just not enough money and not enough resources and quite frankly, not enough commitment. It's going to take organizations like the American Legion or other fraternal organizations and other nonprofit organizations, as well as city and state governments and private organizations to get a handle around this problem. For example, VA only has 1,800 domiciliary beds in the entire country. Now, if you talk about 500,000 homeless veterans, they only have room for 1,800 domiciliary beds. They only have only 4,900 veterans received treatments in some of the vet centers last year out of 14,000. So, I mean, the money is just not there, and the people are not there to solve the problem from a government standpoint. So it's just a much larger problem than that.
I see here in your article that the VA operates more than 130 sites
That's right.
where extensive outreach, physical and psychiatric health exams and treatments, referrals, etc. 130 sites for 500,000 people, and from what Rochele and Samuel tell me, that most people don't even want to go to any of these sites.
There's a certain amount of distrust that has been earned, and then sometimes maybe misunderstandings. But the point is that the problem is just much larger than what government itself can solve, and we're all going to have to pitch in to help those who want to be helped. There's some that we're not going to be able to touch no matter what, and I think everyone would agree.
Yes, we just got another on our chat room. We are webbing, streaming over to about 56 countries right now, and the chat room says no veteran who has fought within a war should be out there homeless. We should care for everyone who has sacrificed for our freedoms. And in today's day and age, when so much of this has getting as scary it is that we're going into another conflict, it's amazing that we're not just focused more and doing more. We'll be right back after these commercials.
The Veterans Hour continues to salute our nation's armed forces and their families when the Veterans Hour continues on the TRN Talk Radio Network.
You're listening to the Veterans Radio Hour. We're here every Sunday evening at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're heard on the Talk Radio Network in some 56 on the Talk Radio Network on numerous stations around the country, as well as on the internet, where we're heard in some 56 countries. Tonight's program is really fascinating, and I must also say rather disturbing to hear some of these shocking statistics with regard to the subject of homeless veterans. For example, that 40% of the homeless are veterans, and the fact that at any given time there are 250,000 homeless vets. This is truly a disturbing thought to think that people who have served their country should find themselves in a situation where they have no homes. As one of our guests pointed out just now, the problem is really larger than the government itself can handle, and that means that we'll all have to pitch in any way that we can. And I think as you listen to the show this evening, you'll be getting some information as to how we can do that. Our guests this evening are Ronald Conley, the National Commander of the 2.8 million member American Legion. Also James Carroll, Associate Editor with the American Legion magazine. He was a combat motion picture cameraman in Vietnam also. We have with us Rochele Crump, Director and Community Liaison for the City of Chicago Advisory Council on Veterans Affairs under the Commission on Human Relations. And in the studio we have Samuel Miller, who is himself a Vietnam veteran with 2 tours of duty. He is a case manager working with veterans with Feather Fist, which is a social service agency for the homeless. Our guests this evening are extremely knowledgeable on the subject, and we're delighted to have them all here, either with us in the studio or via telephone hookup. Stay with us. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us here if you're listening on the internet, right in the chat room. Thank you for listening, and stay with us here at the Veterans Radio Hour.
Stand by. The Veterans Hour now returns to duty on the Talk Radio Network.
And welcome back to the Veterans Radio Hour. This is Kenny DeCamp sitting in for General Dave Grange today. We're talking about homeless veterans. We've got on with us the commander of the American Legion, Ronald Conley. I'm so glad he was able to join us, along with Rochele Crump, who's the director of Veterans Affairs for the City of Chicago here under the Commission for Human Rights. Jim Carroll's with us also, the author of a great article called Cycle of Despair, Homeless Veterans in the American Legion magazine. And also sitting next to me is Samuel Miller. Samuel is a case manager working with veterans, and I read something in the magazine that I'll bring Jim on in a minute too, but Samuel, I read about a stand down. It was something new for me to learn about. Could you help me understand what a stand down is?
Well, stand down is a term that they used in Vietnam when you came back from the front, and you were back for rest and recuperation for a day or so. We've taken that term in social services or within the community. Here in Chicago, we've had stand down for 10 years. What we do in the summertime, we assemble veterans for 2 days. It used to be 3 days, but we've since cut it back to 2 full days at one of the armories within the city. And what we try to do is have one-stop services. We have the VA, we have Department of Employment Security, we have Social Security, we have all the people who help with benefits, who help people with benefits at this site. What we do then is basically serve the veterans as they come, first serve basis. Normally in Chicago summertime, we serve anywhere from 500 to 800 veterans. And within those 2 days, a veteran is able to make appointments for dental, eye, medical services. He's also able to get clothes, rest and recuperation, and make contacts for employment also.
Rochele, you're involved with this as well? Rochele Crump, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Are you involved with the stand downs that take place in Chicago?
Yes, I am. They're held twice a year, summer and winter. And it's a great opportunity for those homeless veterans to come together and, as Sam described, to utilize those services in one place, whereas they're not having to go all over the city to get information on their benefits. They can check their Social Security benefits. They can check their VA status to see where their claims are. As he stated, they're given food, medical services, haircuts. It's a great event for them. They look forward to it. They do come out, and it's good. The only drawback that I see with it is that the follow-up care.
Right. We've got a chat room that just came in just about that, stating that the stand-down was, I guess, created by the National Coalition for Homeless Vets. And it doesn't really work because of what you talked about earlier, of the veterans who don't trust and who don't come, who can't get there, who don't care. I mean, are there a lot of just regular vets like myself who would show up, or is it a lot of homeless people?
It's a mixture. It's a mixture. You have veterans who really, really don't need those services, but they come because they're veterans, and they may have some income disparity that would almost put them into a homeless situation if it happened. But there's a good number of veterans who come out who are actually in need of those services. But again, it's a bad system for tracking them after the 2-day event to see, what happened to them, to find out whether or not they followed up on the medical appointments that they made, different things like that.
Yeah, that would seem to be the biggest thing to do. We've got somebody on the line out of Washington. Steve, are you there with us?
Yeah, I am.
You got a question, I understand?
Well, no, just to go on with what they said earlier about, not being able to get veterans benefits. I have a good friend who was on the show before, Gunny Brandon, out of McMinnville, Oregon. He lost a friend, Bob Lang. I guess he was a 2 or 3 toured a Vietnam Marine, and he died at the age of 55 a couple of days ago of Agent Orange, and he tried to get benefits at the VA, and they kept telling him there's nothing wrong with him.
Okay, let's look into that for a minute. Is part of the homeless veteran of the Gulf War having anything to do with what people are calling the Agent Orange and the syndromes that came out of that? Would you have any idea of that, Commander Conley?
Well, there's a certain amount of that. You're dealing with post-traumatic stress, whether it was from Vietnam or whether it was from the Persian Gulf. You also have, believe it or not, and a lot of people don't understand this, you got World War II and Korean veterans that are homeless also in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And and going back to the stand down, if I can, it's a good thing for the 2 days, but I like to re-emphasize that once that stand down is over, the veteran goes back out into the streets. And the problem we need to face, and I don't remember who the gentleman was saying, was the government can't take the responsibility. The government didn't go to homeless shelters or go to the streets to recruit homeless people to serve in the military. These were people that served in the military honorably, got discharged honorably. And for whatever roll of the dice, they end up being homeless. And not only does the nation, but I think the veterans organizations as a whole has an obligation to try to sit there and deal with this problem. It isn't getting better, it's getting worse.
Okay.
It's had a 34% increase since 1998.
It is getting worse. We're going to have to take a break from the radio stations. We're going to stream for a little bit longer. We're going to go out with one of our numbers as we normally do, dedicated to our World War II vets. We'll be right back after this message.
Listening to the Veterans Radio Hour. This is Carroll King. Please join us next week.
Another world alone with you, sharing all the joys we used to know.
That's Mark DeMin singing for our World War II vets. We heard that we're losing between 1,200 and 1,500 of them a day. And there's a lot of honor happening for the World War II vets, as we know. I'm sure they've had their share of homelessness and disappointments as they've gone on, too. We're back here now with Ronald Conley, the commander of the American Legion, Rochele Crump, the director of Veterans Affairs here in Chicago, Jim Carroll, the assistant editor and author of a story in the American Legion magazine on homeless veterans, and our own good friend, case manager with the homeless vets, Samuel Miller. Samuel, you were telling us that some of the follow-up is starting to take place, like with certain agencies of yours, including you handed me a sheet of paper here that shows, I would say 20 to 30 shelter transitional housing spaces. Can you tell us a little bit about what your follow-up after a stand-down is?
Well, after stand down, our agency, Featherfist, has been able to take some of those individuals and house them transitionally. We're in the city of Chicago, there's a lack of permanent housing space for veterans. I think we probably have only about 70 beds online transitionally, and that period goes anywhere from say 120 days to 2 years, depending on the two or three programs. But yeah, through trials and tribulations, we are able to take some referrals from stand down, effectively get them their benefits, get them their services, and put them into transitional housing. If we keep them clean, we're able to place them into some type of permanent housing. But if you understand where we're all coming from, that's like putting a Band-Aid on profuse bleeding.
I would imagine so, with 500,000 of them. We're going to begin winding down here on the web and try to get a little bit more advice and information from each one of our guests. And I'd like to start with Commander Conley, if he could. If there's one brief note or an idea that we should know about in relationship to the homeless veteran, or what we can do.
Well, I think the biggest part dealing with the homeless veteran is the transitional housing and not giving them a 30-day or 60 or 120-day program. They need to be able to progress at their own pace as far as rehabilitation. And we have to be able to help them secure a job or go to school. And if you have those factors involved in dealing with homeless veterans, you're going to have a pretty good success rate.
Mm-hmm. And Jim Carroll, from being a Vietnam veteran yourself who was shooting motion pictures to now interviewing and finding out as much as you have for many different articles besides the homeless veteran one, but from this one, what do you think you've pulled out of it the most for yourself?
Well, Ken, I have found that these folks are not faceless people. They all are individual human beings who have stories to tell. They have families, they have loved ones, they had jobs at one time. They all are veterans. They all served the military. Many of them fought in combat and received wounds that they still suffer today. When you talk about 500,000 being on the streets over a given year, or 250,000 at any one time during the year, you can get overwhelmed, but you just have to remember that you have to measure success by one veteran at a time. And if you can reach one veteran, then go to the next, go to the next. That's just what has to be done, I think.
So there should be a coalition of us veterans also working towards this a little bit more, that buddy plan, buddy system I talked about earlier.
Absolutely, absolutely. Leave no one outside the gates.
And Rochele, how are your gates opening and closing here in Chicago?
Well, let me just say, Kenny, because this is the last comment, right?
We can go a little longer, but you can keep talking.
I just want to commend Mr. Carroll for his article, and also I think we should commend the nation's efforts on finally seeing where we went wrong to prolong, the agonies and the things that have gone wrong with our men and women who have served this nation. And let's just hope for the best on that. I think some of what we really need to look at are these long-term treatment programs. As the commander stated, the transitional housing, it needs to be longer, and people do need to progress at their own pace. But we also need to look at long-term treatment programs for alcohol and substance abuse. These 21-day detox programs followed by outpatient treatment plans just don't work. Mm-hmm. It took these individuals 21 years to get in this state. So it will take almost that long to pull them out of that state. So we need more accountability, and we need to see programs that have more substance to them.
Mm-hmm. When you were on our program last time, Rochele, we were talking about the closing down of the Lakeside VA hospital here, which seemed tragic to a lot of people. Is there anything new working on that? I think you even suggested that we turn that into a space for veterans, the homeless, those needing rehabilitation, etc. What's newest on the front with that?
Basically, they're here in Chicago. They're still looking forward to closing the VA Lakeside Hospital. There are some efforts by the Catholic Charities to utilize some space out at the VA Hines for homeless individuals. It won't just be veterans. So there is some effort being made here to deal with that. But it'll take more than that, as Mr. Carroll said. It will take more people to be committed to making this work. We need everyone on the forefront. We need more space availability in these transitional shelters for veterans, because we're competing with the outside homeless people. And not to say that they're not any different than our humans, veteran humans, but we need space also.
Yes. We tried to have somebody from the Congressional Committee on Veterans Affairs, and unfortunately we thought we did. We thought we had Congressman Smith, who chairs that committee, going to be on with us, or have at least one of his other representatives. And unfortunately no one was able to, I guess, come on tonight. Is there something any of us should do towards our congressman, or is it just become so bureaucratic with one agency joining another and another and another that we're sort of all in a loss. Or what do you think of that, Commander Conley?
Well, I think we need to maintain pressure on Congress. That's where the funding comes from, no matter what agency it is. And they have an oversight to make sure that that money is appropriated in the right way and spent in the right way. So the Congress is the place to go. And they actually need to be familiar with what the process is here and how the veterans are being treated. And Jim mentioned about treating one veteran at a time, but and I totally concur with that. But we need to get more impact on a long-term process, especially given housing and jobs and education to some of these veterans and dealing with their abuses. Rochele mentioned that they accumulated this problem over 21 years, and it's not going to be treated in 21 days. That she's absolutely right.
Yes.
And
Well,
Kenny, just so you'll know, there is a campaign by Representatives Julia Carson and John Conyers, the Bringing America Home campaign. And there's a bill on the table now, I guess, being introduced by those two to address and to look at the systematic causes of homelessness. So there is some address to that now on the table.
Samuel, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I'd like to commend Commander Conley and Jim on the work that they've done in bringing this information to us tonight and to the American Legion. I am a Legionnaire also, and as a pleasure, it is a pleasure to work with Rochele. What needs to be done now, all our veteran agencies, all our veteran organizations need to find 1 or 2 points to galvanize on, create a platform and present this. I mean, we need to demand what services we need. If we want to address homelessness and the closing of our veterans hospitals, this is a good rallying point for all of us now to do so.
We just got a chat message that came in from Ivan Dogood. It sounds like a great guy with that name. He says, if we keep the all-volunteer force, then we should train every volunteer to either get a college degree or at least a secondary MOS. And that would offer a civilian vocation that he or she can love, so that after the service they are not hit by these blues and become homeless. He says, my point is we should look at a soldier as a complete citizen and have a plan B ready for when they leave the service. Use the reserve commitment of several years as an anchor after they leave active duty, or at least have some income. What do you think of that one, Commander?
Well, let me tell you, that's totally false, because some of the people we've had in our homeless program, one was a dentist, one was a school teacher, one was a carpenter, one was a pipe fitter. These are people that have educations that are well trained. And what's happened is they get hooked on alcohol, or they get hooked on drugs, or a combination of both. And that has destroyed a lot of families and a lot of careers. And once we're able to get them back on track and get them rehabilitated and get them to be a productive citizen again, they are able to go back, be performing their original way of life, becoming a dentist again, or becoming a school teacher or doctor. So having a second career or having a MOS that they can fall back on isn't it. The problem is the disease that they are associated with, and that's alcohol or drugs.
Yeah. So it all I guess boils back down to whether or not the stress or the disorder that they ended up with, Samuel mentioned earlier, it can take time to almost incubate.
Right. Well, if you take a person that's been in combat, or turns around and has a real traumatic experience in the military, and he turns around and tries to bury that pain that he has in his head and his heart, he tries to bury it with drugs or alcohol, eventually it's going to grab a hold of him. And then it destroys his family, and then it destroys his job, and then he becomes a homeless person. These are the people we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess then my biggest hope is, and I have a relationship that I think I'll send a letter to Dennis Hastert, the Speaker of the House, about my opinion that we definitely need some good accountability, this financial awareness of all the money that has been allocated, and that it starts getting down to the right people for the right directions.
Right.
Do you think some of this is also related to the faith-based initiatives that are being planned?
Well, I think that a lot of times when the government tries to do good, and they're getting 3 agencies involved here, and they're trying to shift around, and they put this thing out, that's a good 60-second at 6 o'clock news release. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly.
They got to get down to the reality, and they got to put the money and take care of the problem, and quit worrying about the news release and the 60-second spots on the 6 o'clock news.
You got it.
And I think the faith-based initiatives are not where we need to go with that. The new plan is housing first, which the Chicago Continuum of Care just got involved in. They're gonna take people within 100 days, 100 and 120 days, and put them in housing and have wraparound services for that individual or for that family. When I say wraparound services, they're gonna house them and then have case management follow up and continue to work with that individual while they're housed. And this may not be in a structure as we know it. It just may be private housing. But the veterans issues, the veterans are fighting funding with as they alluded to earlier, the 3 agencies plus HUD and NASA, the veterans budget, all of that was coming out of one pot, the Appropriations Committee. To me, when Congress was giving or allocating the money to the VA was a lot better off. Since they're streamlining and becoming more business oriented, then they're not very veteran friendly right now. Mm-hmm. And we need to be able to get back to the point that at one point the veterans had the largest voting bloc within this country. For some reason we've been separated. We need to come back together.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it down now, and I want to thank you all for being here. And you talk about the veterans being dislocated right now somewhat. I want to remind everybody on February 12th, we are going to travel to Washington to support the Medal of Honor recipient and Vietnamese prisoner of war, retired Air Force General George Bud Day, as he presents to the United States Supreme Court a lawsuit against the federal government on behalf of more than 22,000 former World War II and Korean War career military veterans who have had quite a few of their health care benefits taken away from them. Has any story ever come out about that, Jim? Have you looked into that as well?
Yes, we're always trying to keep our eyes open for any of those types of stories, and it's a tragedy that veterans who have served their country well are treated in such manners. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Those of you there out on the web, those that were listening to us on the radio earlier. We have one more thought here. We might need a national effort on the general homelessness issue, or it will be left up to the VA and certain private voluntary organizations and charities. I think he's looking to try to do a national effort by everybody. The creation of, whether it's American Legion and the Veterans Affairs of all the different cities, these veterans councils that are being built up, the Vietnam Veterans of America, local organizations. I mean, somehow we've all got to find how we could all plug together. Commander Conley, thank you so much for being with us, and the best of luck to you over the rest of your term.
It's my pleasure.
And Rochele Crump, I know you're going to be around with us much longer. Thank you for everything. And also Jim Carroll, if it wasn't for you writing this story, I don't think we'd been able to have this show. I want you to wish you the best and continued luck with everything that you do.
Thanks, sir.
And Samuel Miller, thanks for being here with us. You're another good guy. Colonel Tom's over here with us on the keyboards, keeping the chat room going. We want to thank Mark Eli for being our webmaster, and Carl King playing on the all the knobs in there, laughing away. Once again, thank everybody for being here, and next week we'll see you with Ordinary Heroes on the VeteransRadioHour.com.